Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. We are going to be looking at Week 13 and looking back a little bit at BYU. They had a big weekend, both in football against TCU, basketball against UConn. So we're going to look back at that a little bit and also look ahead at Big 12, look at the standings, the college football play, the rankings and the playoff picture. And then also we'll be doing our power rankings. We'll be making our picks. So got a ton to talk about tonight. As you may notice, Adam is not here with me. That he's chickened out, I think, once again, because he is so far behind on our picks that he didn't want to show his face. So alas, it'll just be me tonight, which is perfect because got a lot, like I said, to talk about. And sorry for any of those joining us live that I was late. Hopefully you still find your way to the show and join us and hop in the chat. And for any of those who are new to the show, please, if you're a BYU fan, if you're a fan of the Big 12, then please like this video, subscribe to the channel. We are here every Monday to kind of recap and look ahead for the next week. And we also get guests on to preview the matchup for BYU's opponent for the week, as well as live reactions on Saturdays afterwards. So appreciate you joining us and joining in the conversation. That is what this is all about. So first of all, just a look back. Again, it was a very busy weekend for BYU. The game against TCU, which was just a complete thrashing, complete domination of TCU, which felt really good, especially considering how things have gone with BYU against TCU over the last several matchups. So I was there when TCU really put it to BYU back in the I think it was 2008 or 2009. Now I'm forgetting, but man, and it was painful. It was no fun. I think it was 2009, and now it was BYU's turn to repay the favor, although not nearly as much at stake for TCU. This is a team that seems to be spiraling down, but it was also a team in BYU that really had put things together. So thinking back on it, we did our live reactions, and I don't know if I have a whole lot more to add other than this team looked like they answered the call. They were able to regroup after an embarrassing loss. They got dominated, and were able to turn around and come back home and put together a full, complete game on offense, defense, special teams, other than a certain blunder that I don't want to put too much insight on with the backup punter. But BYU just really came out with a mission and made a statement. And they won with style points. And I know it's not Sitake's style to run up the score, but rather let up off the gas. And oftentimes it's a smart thing. It's the sure strategy. You can run up the clock, you can protect players, and all of that is important. But the committee looks at these scores, and there is a narrative around BYU saying that BYU is just scraping by these games, that they're just getting by lesser opponents. How good could they really be? And that perception is going to be really hard to overcome when it comes time for the committee to figure out who goes into the playoff. Because even if BYU wins out, but then they lose in the conference championship game, it's no guarantee that they'll get in that large spot. That committee's itching to get even more SEC teams in there, another Big Ten team in there, despite the records and despite what they've done, despite what the stats say. And so BYU really has to be perfect from now on. They've kind of used their mulligan, and now because they've had so many close games, which is incredible. Like, they've been exciting games. It's been great to watch them come back. That is a skill, to be able to know how to win and find ways to win. We've seen teams that are the opposite, that they find ways to lose these close games. So, but we know that. All the voters don't necessarily know that, or even if they know that, there's still a lot of stock put in blowing teams out. I mean, a lot of people have Utah ahead of BYU on their power rankings, even though BYU beat Utah head to head. And really, that game could have been a bigger score. I mean, had BYU played things a little bit differently at the end of that game, had BYU not let their foot off the gas against Utah, maybe that score is just a little bit better. And then all of a sudden, it's harder for people to put Utah ahead of BYU in their power rankings. It's hard for people to argue that Utah should have a spot in the playoff over BYU, even though BYU has the head-to-head. Like at some point, when are we going to use the games that were played as criteria for who gets in the playoff? But I'm getting ahead of myself because we'll get to the playoff picture after this. I want to just kind of recap, talk a little bit about the game first, do a real quick summary on the basketball game, and then we'll move on to this weekend. Actually, let's start with the basketball game. Well, before we shift gears and go full in on football. We talked about this in the live reaction show, and it's crazy because the sentiment from BYU fans seems to be one of a lot of excitement and almost relief. A lot of it almost feels as if BYU had won that game because of how badly they were getting beat down by UConn, and then they were able to have that incredible comeback and with a real shot to tie or win the game. And even though BYU fell short, it was against a team that, while they didn't win last year, it was coming off not too far removed from back-to-back national championships. They're ranked ahead of them in the polls. We saw today that BYU did drop 2 spots, but they're at the head of all the teams with 1 loss. So the only teams ahead of BYU at this point all are undefeated. And so, I mean, arguably a 2-point loss to a team that's ranked a few spots ahead of you in the polls, you're both top 10. I would argue that, maybe you shouldn't even drop. Maybe you move up, in a situation like that. But in this case, there are other teams that are undefeated. They moved up. BYU moves back. Ultimately, I don't see this being something that will really hurt BYU. Had they gotten blown out by UConn? Yes, but a close win. And maybe, it's one of those quality losses. And so maybe that's part of it. I mean, considering how things had been going in the game and where it ended, and to see a performance like that from AJ DeBonsa, there's a lot of relief with that. And we know that the committee is going to look back at that game and not necessarily ding BYU for it. So we can be relieved. I mean, it's still a loss. It is a bummer. More than the loss, it's a bummer how it happened. I mean, Rob Wright has probably been dribbling between his legs since he was a wee lad. I mean, he's been doing this for years and years and years, and can do it in his sleep. And just happened to, in that moment, bounce, and dribble off his leg, and we lost it. And that's unfortunate because BYU didn't even get the shot. Like, if BYU had gotten their shot off and it just didn't go, like, you live with that. But to not even be able to, and to see an error like that from your point guard who has handles. He's a very skilled point guard. Although, I mean, it looked like he did have a lane, and he's probably going for the quick bucket, and that's something that he's totally capable of doing. I just think with the way AJ was playing, find a way to get him the bucket, because he seemed unstoppable at that point. But anyway, so that's my thoughts on basketball. Let's transition back to football. I do have some tweets here from last weekend, or from this last weekend, from Saturday, that I didn't end up sharing in the live reaction show. So I want to go through some of these as kind of guide our narrative here. So Heartland College Sports just highlighted this picture. Someone in the background with the Big 12 is greater than ACC with a record 6-1 this year. Love it. Love the shout out there from fans showing up at game day representing. And now going to the game. This is I had the same thought as Johnny Linehan. This was back in the was it still the third quarter when TCU had used 2 timeouts, and Johnny Linehan, TCU deploying the BYU second half timeout strategy is bold. Obviously, the game was getting out of hand, and they had to do something. And BYU hasn't been as bad, but I thought that was funny nonetheless. Okay, Brigham's Burner says, I want you to drop the ball on the ground after it's snapped. Why, coach? You'll see. Obviously referring to the punter, which I was already referring to, where he just failed to swing his leg and even attempt to kick the ball turnover, which then, well, I mean, it was going to them anyway, but to the other team anyway, but essentially a turnover. And then, but then BYU got a turnover right back, got that pick six, which is so good because that helps with, again, the style points. Style points. Thank you, Tanner Wall. Thank you for not getting tackled. Although I do want to say on that play, you go back and watch it, and I won't show it here because I've gotten dinged by YouTube before, but there is a big guy hauling like he is just going, and he catches up to Tanner. He's the one that pushes him at the end as he goes into the end zone. That is a big boy, and he was covering ground. So that was very impressive. Great effort for him. If nothing else for TCU, they go home after that game. That boy, I hope, got some credit for that play because he had wheels. As Parker said, he unhitched the trailer. So, again, Johnny Linehan says, Parker, I love Parker just pointing to the scoreboard when TCU guy tried taunting him. And I don't know how many of you caught that, but they were on the sideline. They're getting each other's face. And guy was clearly, frustrated and picking a fight, something. And Parker just points up to the scoreboard. I think that's the best reaction when people can do that. A little bit of shades of when those famous that soccer match, women's soccer match against New Mexico, when they're in there pulling hair and just dirty fouls all game. And at one point, one of the BYU players, she just points to the scoreboard, and I love it. Great comeback and taunt there. Joe Wheat says TCU. So now just away from some of the highlights of the game. I mean, we could go, there were so many of them, but just put this game into perspective. TCU was a top 30 power rated team coming into tonight. Absolute domination. And so, and he said, and again, Johnny Linehan, man, I didn't realize I had so many Linehan tweets in here tonight. Another lucky performance from BYU. Totally didn't deserve to win that one. Love that because, that's going to be, narrative again. All right. Ben Criddle says, need I remind you, TCU is 39th in SP Plus and a good 6-3 football team. TCU 2025 results in margin. This is where it's impressive. Average winning scoring margin, plus 15.3 points per win. Average losing scoring margin, and there are 3 losses, 6.3 points per loss. And then looking at this, you can see their scores, against all these teams. So when they win pretty big, pretty handedly. And when they lose, relatively close there. And then you see, they're just, I guess these games weren't winning big, but they've been kind of skidding here a little bit as of late. But yeah, they've had some really impressive outcomes. And then you look at the score against BYU, and they just got, just completely flipped the script. TCU wasn't able to score. I mean, look at this. Their lowest scoring total, what was it? I guess 17 in that loss to Iowa State. But before that, 23, 42, 28, like they're still putting up points even in their losses. And so I think that's a great perspective to have there. Joe Weed, again, if you think about it, so I thought that was, nope. Okay. Well, so big noon kickoff. BYU's getting in a much more palatable kickoff time, 8 p.m. It'll be a little rough around bedtime, but it's all right. Get the kids watching. Been out getting all the kids involved, playing some football the last week or so. So got them interested, excited to watch. So can actually get them in to watch some of the game, get them to bed, watch, and get to bed at a reasonable hour. But that's not what's important. That's not why we're excited about this matchup. Just again, this is what is it? I mean, how many weeks in a row? I think 3 or 4. But then to Joe's point here, 3 times. Okay, so let me take a step back. It says, if you think about it, BYU has actually been a main subject of a national CFB morning show 5 times this season. 3 times in games BYU played in, and both times they went to Utah. So that's obviously a little dig at Utah, who can't help but talk about BYU all the time, even when the focus is supposed to be on Utah. So, pretty crazy. I think it's wild that Big Noon Fox or whatever it is, Big Noon Kickoff is coming again, highlighting BYU. So it goes to show that BYU does have that brand power, and and is really, making noise this season. And it is a bummer that since he lost, had they won, maybe College Game Day goes there. I doubt it, but it's all right. Still getting highlighted there, and both teams have actually been highlighted by Big Noon kickoff as well. Since he was at Utah, so they love them some Big 12, and that's pretty great for the conference, and getting that matchup highlighted is pretty great. Again, Joe, BYU is 9-1 in top 30 strength of schedule, top 8 strength of record, and currently find themselves outside the playoff. They would be in the top 5 if you slapped an SEC logo on their jersey. How many people think that? Do you guys think that if BYU were an SEC team, or their blind resumes, that BYU would be top 5 with their resume? I don't know. I certainly think they deserve more credit, and it was great. That's why it was so important. Again, I can't stress this enough, that they had a big dominating win over TCU to kind of bounce back, kind of help us move past the Texas Tech narrative and some of the other narrative, and really change that and look forward and show what BYU has accomplished. So, and can do, is capable of, and really show them they're playing their best football right now. And that's what this game against Cincy is going to be all about, is BYU has to show that they are for real. They can go, and yes, Cincy just lost, but they can go into Cincinnati and make a statement. If they can have another very impressive win, or even just win, but if they have a chance to have an impressive win, they can really make a statement and go into their last game of the season with a lot of momentum against a UCF team that should be overmatched by BYU, especially in Provo. Obviously, you don't want to look past anybody, but it's all riding on Cincinnati, it feels like right now, because then, it's just UCF after that. And then you're basically assuming that Texas Tech is able to also take care of business. It's assuming that BYU is going to have another, face Texas Tech, have a rematch with Texas Tech, round 2 with the Red Raiders, and see if they can change that narrative at all. But all of that starts this week against Cincinnati. So again, very impressive season, I think, from BYU. We, as BYU fans, know BYU is good. I think a lot of the Big 12 also thinks that, and wants there to be more respect. Obviously, it's beneficial for the entire conference if we can get 2 teams in. And I think the best way for that to happen is for most likely a scenario. I think 3 is gone. I think last weekend, I think the realistic chance of getting 3 Big 12 teams in the playoff was very slim to begin with, and not because they don't deserve it. I do think Utah definitely deserves to be in the conversation, but you have to cut it off somewhere. And if you're looking at a conference where there's clearly a top 3, but of those top 3, one of those 3 has lost to both those other 2 teams, at some point you say, okay, well, clearly there's a pecking order there. Clearly it is, Texas Tech, BYU, then Utah at the moment. And that's not to say that Utah isn't capable of beating either of those teams, but they lost. And at some point you have to put weight to the games that were actually played. And so I think Utah fans will be peeved that they don't get in. If, as a third team, if the scenario plays out as I'm kind of laying out here, if all things go well for BYU, Utah fans will be peeved that they get overlooked, especially if they keep playing how they've been playing. But I think that's fair. I mean, that's the same argument against SEC teams is, look, you're the 5th best in your conference. You've had a chance against these teams that are at the top, and you've already not done it. So yes, you're very good. Yes, you're very playoff quality, sure. But at what point do you have to cut off? Like, at some point you have to say, okay, but these are the teams that made it through your conference. These are the teams that showed the most when you all played each other. Why do we just need all of you back in just to play it all again? Like, you had your chance. That's what the regular season is for. And so I'd love to see it. I do not think 3 is happening, because this last weekend, just some of the games just did not quite go the way we needed them to. And there's very few chances, and very few realistic chances at this point, especially with the ACC backloading all their cupcake games there to kind of right before that final game of the season. So there's just not a lot of realistic opportunities to see these teams fall left in the season to really clear up those last remaining spaces. And unfortunately, Notre Dame took care of business against Pitt, and they're just taking up one of those slots. And it's obnoxious. It's annoying to see them ahead of BYU in the power rankings, or not in the power rankings, in the AP poll, and also the college football playoff rankings there. So anyway, I don't know why I left that up this whole time, but so it's frustrating. It's, we see the bias there, and I believe BYU is a playoff team, but I'm also realistic in understanding that I don't even know if the Big 12 is for sure going to get 2 in, even though I think it's certainly deserving. I think the best shot, again, Texas Tech, BYU, playing the conference championship game. They say you don't get penalized for what happens there. I can't believe that won't have some impact on the committee's mind. Again, I do think they're also ratings driven. I do think that they take that into account. I think that should help BYU. I think BYU is a draw, and that should hopefully pull in favor of BYU, but obviously so is Notre Dame, much more. So Notre Dame's one of the biggest draws, and so that doesn't help. The teams that are also on the fringe there, you look at an Oklahoma or Oregon or whoever, that are, assuming Oregon loses another game, but then you'd have a USC that would be creeping up in there, and those are all bigger household brands than BYU. So while I say that it helps that BYU is a draw, the teams that they're going up against are arguably bigger draws. So, that doesn't necessarily help, but it can't hurt. But so if they play BYU, obviously if they beat Texas Tech second time, they're in, and I can't see Tech getting left out at this point, especially having already had a very dominant win over BYU. I think the other scenario is if BYU loses, but it is a relatively close game, then I think there's a chance, if other things work out right, I could see BYU slipping in. I just don't have a lot of confidence that will happen. So again, let's just get back to business, focus on Cincinnati this week, take care of business, and BYU will have that chance. And if BYU falls short again, then at some point you just say, you know what, and BYU doesn't get in, Texas Tech, that means has beaten BYU twice at that point, then you'd say, well, Tech was the better team, this year, and you tip your hat to them and move on. But you want to get to that point to at least have that shot and to redeem yourself. Okay, something I thought was really cool is that Bear Bachmeier is in the record books for BYU. It says BYU's Bear Bachmeier has scored a school record 10th rushing touchdown this season. He ties BYU quarterback season record with Taysom Hill, 2013, Steve Young, 1982, and Zach Wilson, 2020. So very impressive. I'm going to go ahead and say it's pretty safe to say that Bear Bachmeier is going to break this record, barring any injury or anything that might happen to him. You think about it, we got 2 more games, plus a bowl game, plus possibly a conference championship game. That is going to be a chance for Bear to get at least one more rushing touchdown, which when you get in the red zone, I mean, he just seems unstoppable in those situations. So it's bound to happen. So very, very cool. Speaking of Bear Bachmeier's play, it says this is CFB numbers on Twitter showing QB play for just this weekend games. Up first is the Power 4. Bear Bachmeier, please change your number, leads the way. Fernando Mendoza, Mitch Griffiths, and Dante Moore up next. All right, so if you can't see this or read it, this is looking at QB play. That on the y-axis here, you have PFF offense grade, so that weird, and on the x-axis, ESPN QBR, and BYU is in the top right of the top right quadrant here, and just way above everybody else. And very, very impressive to see what he's been doing, and definitely been catching the eyes of the nation and scouts and everybody. I think a lot of people have been watching him very closely with the way he plays. Now, I'm not foolish enough to think that Bear Bachmeier is going to be in the Heisman conversation this year. If you're going to be, he'd already be there. Maybe if I would have had some killer game against Tech, possibly. But I have seen stats, and I wish I had it pulled up now, comparing his numbers to some of the other guys like Diego Pavia, and some of the other top QBs, and seeing what he's doing and what they've done. And they're very comparable. And what he's done is very impressive. So if anything, that's more of I think he possibly should at least be, mentioned or talked about, or at least that point there should be brought up, is what he's done as a true freshman, and should be at least shown, hey, he's got similar numbers to these other guys that are complete studs. Also, that should be, we know that he's not going to win, but if those are similar numbers and he's not able to win with those, then that should be a conversation or a point for our boy, what's his name, Jacob Rodriguez at Texas Tech, saying, hey, maybe it's not a quarterback's year if you got this true freshman coming in doing similar stuff with these other top quarterbacks are doing. Look what this guy's doing on defense. I think he needs to be in the conversation. He is incredible. I really love our linebackers. I think we've got a lot of depth there, and probably as a unit, one of the best units. You look at the tandem of Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly. Oh my gosh, he's like my favorite player. I almost forgot his name. So you look at those two guys, and I mean, they've been a little banged up, which has affected them a little bit, but I do think that's one of the best tandems in college football. But what this guy does on his own is just insane. He's very, very good, and I would love for him to be in the conversation. It's probably not going to happen, but if you're at least in the conversation, I would love it. Love to see him get an invite to the Heisman ceremony. And if he were to win it, the Big 12 were able to bring home its second straight Heisman trophy, that would be very, very awesome. Although I think the wrong Big 12 player won it last year. I think it probably should have been Cam Scatterbo, but that's neither here nor there at this point. So anyway, very awesome for Bear. Buddy and friend of the show, Jeff Fuller, showing BYU from the lowly Big 12 sitting here with a tougher strength of schedule at 27th than, and then he's got some asterisks here, so equal or better record too. And he says better strength of schedule to teams than Ohio State, Indiana, Ole Miss, Oregon, Texas Tech, Notre Dame, Michigan, USC, Miami, Georgia Tech, Utah, Tennessee. So give the Cougars some credit for beating teams that are actually good, and not just teams who AP voters wrongly prognosticated should have been good. And so look at this, at where BYU falls. And so yeah, strength of schedule. Look at these teams ahead of them. So A&M is ahead, and Georgia, and that's it. These other teams, Alabama as well. So a lot of reasons, a lot of empirical data to support that BYU is a good team. And also look at what they've actually accomplished. I know you think these other teams are better because of their recruiting, or because they're in the SEC, or because you thought they were going to be good before the season. But at some point we have to put weight on the games that are actually played and what teams actually accomplish. And that's my personal opinion. Like, I don't think, for me, the playoff isn't just about getting the best, all the best teams in the 12 slots. If it were, we wouldn't be taking conference champions. We wouldn't be taking a group of 6 team. We would just be, you just take the rankings and take the top 12 teams and put them in, and there's a playoff. For me, it's, hey, our conferences are getting so big that we can't even have our teams aren't able to play everyone in their own conference. It's hard to truly come away with a real conference champion, because a lot of things are being decided by so many tiebreakers that's a real issue. And at some point you have to say, okay, these are the teams that did the most in the season. We put them in, and then we're going to let them play it out because there's just way too many teams. Like I said, I guess to my point, you have too many teams in a single conference to even figure things out. But yet you're going to say, okay, now we're going to project that across all of college football and take all the teams that we think are the best, even though they haven't all played each other. They haven't had similar schedules. We don't really know. Like, this is a chance to bring the best of all these conferences together and let them play each other. And I'm sorry, if you're the fourth team in your conference, like, maybe you get in that large bid, but maybe you don't. Even if you are just as good as those other teams, at some point you have to say there's a cutoff, because these other teams beat you or they were ahead of you in your conference. If you wanted to ensure that you get in, you've got to win those games and get in. And so I guess it depends on where the priorities are for this committee. And I don't know what they're looking at, because to me, I think the way it's set up is, hey, yeah, we're trying to get the best teams, but we realize not all the best teams are going to get in, because we're also trying to get a mix of all these teams so we get representation from everywhere so that everyone's represented, and then we allow them to play it out. I mean, if this were just an SEC thing, then we would just allow the SEC to do their own tournament. Like, I understand it for them because there's more money in it, and it's a branding thing and everything. Of course, they're going to argue that. I just can't believe that ESPN. Well, I can believe it, that ESPN just continues to push that as well, and it's wild to me. So anyway, the sport is what it is. I did not think that us having a playoff would lead to more problems and have us looking back at the days of the BCS, when it seemed like there was at least some rationality that went behind the postseason. But anyway, that's what we love. That's what we're here. We're talking about the playoffs. We're talking about who's getting subbed, and I guess that's all part of it. But it's one thing when you're when you're on the fringes and you don't get in. It's another when you feel like you're there and they're pushing you down for other teams that are less deserving. So it's one thing when you got a few teams that are pretty equal, they got to pick someone. But when somebody like a Notre Dame, who's done less and lost more, is ahead of you, that hurts. So anyway, I want to come back to this. There's a couple more things to my point. Again, more evidence here of showing what BYU has done. But it says, I don't know who needs to hear this CFB playoff, but Oregon best wins at 6-4 Iowa versus 6-4 Minnesota, at 5-5 Northwestern, at 5-5 Rutgers. You could say Penn State in there, and they barely got by Penn State, who turned out was not that good. Even though we thought they were really good at the time, you shouldn't get credit for the team having a number next to their name at the time you beat them. What about at the end of the season? Did we find out that team was really good, or is that just a preseason projection that we put on them and we were wrong? And it turns out that was not that quality of a win, and actually makes us question, why were you in such a close game against a team that has performed that badly? So that part frustrates me. But anyway, back to this tweet. It says BYU's best win versus 8-2 Utah, at 7-3 Arizona, at 7-3 East Carolina. Group of 16, but still, it's 7 games. It's I'd like to see Rutgers against East Carolina. At 6-4 Iowa State, and versus 6-4 TCU. Again, anyway. And BYU is just one example. You can pick any highly ranked team to compare to Oregon. Oregon's resume isn't good enough to be ranked where they are. I don't care what the record is. Y'all made this mistake with Indiana last year, and I'm sure you wish you wouldn't do it again. Thanks. So I don't know who this guy is, what he has against Oregon. Who is this? Oh, it is most likely a BYU guy, or at least Big 12 guys, Jazz contributor. So anyway, and then Jody Genesee on Twitter says, Texas Tech crushes BYU. Everybody, this shows how weak the Big 12 is. BYU is a fraud. Texas Tech is mid. And South Carolina crushes Texas A&M. Same people. Look how amazingly deep the SEC is. Put all 16 teams in the 12-team playoff. That is what it feels like, Jody. I know. I'm with you. All right. So I already talked about this matchup this weekend. Excited about it. But I love this tweet from Brigham's Burner. It says, the BYU versus Cincinnati game is going to be so confusing. All right. Picture of Bear Bachmeier, both a bear and a cat. picture of the logo or the mascot from Cincinnati, neither a bear nor a cat. So has a great point there. So BYU's got one up on the Bearcats there. So, all right. And then 1st and 16, this is a Big 12 podcast making the argument for 3 teams in the Big 12 getting in. It says Texas Tech, BYU, and Utah should all be in the top 10. Texas Tech, no comment needed. BYU, 5 wins versus bowl-eligible teams, only lost to number 7 on the road. And then Utah blowing everyone out, only losses to BYU and Utah. I mean, it's pretty clear. I think all 3 teams have a case. It's just not going to happen. And that's where people are going to talk about expansion of the playoff. We need to make this bigger. But at some point, there are going to be a lot of teams that are playoff worthy, and you have to cut it off somewhere. And I know I'm making that case, which is kind of against BYU. It's just you want to get the right teams in, and teams that have proven it on the field and not just name brands. I mean, we saw what happens when we put too much confidence just in name brands. We look at what Penn State was. We look at Florida this year. We saw Florida State. There's just a lot of examples of teams falling flat, even though they've got that big name brand. They come in with all the hype and everything in the world. Everyone says, yeah, but they recruit better, so they're going to be. Anyway, it's frustrating. It's not going anywhere. It's just how the system is, and until we change the system, that's going to be how it continues to go. Lastly, this is a case from BYU Blue making a case for BYU, talking about the whole point is style points. Like BYU could have put up more on ECU, took their foot off the gas. Same with West Virginia. The Colorado game kind of was down, struggled a little bit, but then started pulling away and then took the foot off the gas. Utah game, I already talked about that. BYU had a chance to make that game even more impressive. Instead, it went really weird. But again, I mean, this is also kind of making excuses for what happened. But to his point, it says, if you don't think style points matter, you're delusional. And if you know they matter and you just don't care. So I think he's kind of frustrated with the coaching staff at BYU for not taking that part of it more seriously. But it's true. It does matter. And BYU needs to come away with some style points in this game against Cincinnati. This is the last real chance of this regular season to really leave an impression, because that game against UCF is not going to cut it. So this game against Cincinnati, and now obviously it means less having just lost Arizona, but this is their chance to really make a statement. And then you have, and really frustrated here, because you look at the playoff chances, according to ESPN, that Utah somehow has a higher chance to make the playoffs than BYU, which is crazy to me. I know that they're looking at probably a lot of different scenarios and wins and the win probability and everything. Like BYU has probably a lower chance to beat Cincinnati than Utah does on their remaining 2 games. What was it, K-State and I don't know. So I can't remember the other game they have. And so I know that goes into it, but BYU owns the tiebreaker, and they're most likely not going to lose. Probably neither is Utah, but BYU would have to lose 2 more games for Utah, unless it gets into a weird tiebreaker with multiple teams. And I just feel like BYU controls their own destiny. They have an easier, clearer path to the playoff, or to the conference championship game, which isn't necessary to get into the playoff. And maybe that's also going into it. Like BYU would have to go to the conference championship game, then they would have to win it, most likely, in which case if they lost that game, especially badly, and Utah's continue to blow people out, some other things go right, yeah, maybe Utah slips in. But it still seems odd to me that they're ahead of BYU in this. And that's crazy that Oregon, and some of this is based off of where they're at today, not necessarily saying these are the better teams. It's just saying how they're positioned. And I disagree with how a team like Oregon is currently positioned. I disagree with the team like Notre Dame and how they're positioned, but that is how they are. And so whatever. All right. So let's, talking about it, BYU is up, we're at 11. Am I right? I need to go back to, speaking of which, piece of news, Virginia Tech hires James Franklin. I know we were talking about Penn State there. So good for him. I think that was widely believed to be a place where he would end up. Seems to be a good fit. Tech desperately needs to figure things out and go into a new direction. And I think, James Franklin, while he struggled getting over the hump against teams like Ohio State and Michigan and really kind of getting to that upper echelon. Well, they were kind of just a half step behind that upper echelon in the Big Ten. I think he will be able to do well at Virginia Tech, and obviously not going up against teams like that every year, national champion type teams every year. Clemson's there, but we'll have to play Notre Dame occasionally. But again, Clemson's fallen off a cliff. The ACC is what the ACC is this year. So anyway, should have a clear path. And I'm really just saying all this as I stall and look at it. So AP comes out. BYU is at 11. We knew that last week that their floor kind of was going to 12 because that would keep them ahead of Utah. Utah stayed at 13. And I just don't see a real clear path. It would have been great to see BYU slip ahead of Alabama. I suppose that's still possible. I don't think so. I mean, maybe if BYU just has killer games the rest of the way and then Alabama struggles a little bit against Auburn. I mean, they're not going to have a problem against Eastern Illinois. I'd love to see Auburn come out and make a game of it. It's that weirder things have happened in that rivalry. So it could happen. I'm really holding out hope. If that's the case, BYU moves up another slot. Because at this point, with Notre Dame ahead of them, it's tough. They've got to be a top 10 team, really, to get one of the at-large bids, because you're going to have an ACC team and a group of 6 team get pulled up to be the 11 and 12. And so BYU still got to find a way to get up one more spot, which is why we need Oregon to lose this weekend, but then they'd still be 9 and 2. Again, the AP poll is not the same thing as the College Football Committee rankings. So but they only have Oregon at 8, and I don't know how they'll have them tomorrow night. So we're recording Monday, so we'll see when those come out where Oregon is, but they had them at 8 last week. I don't know. This game against USC and then at Washington, it's possible. I just don't see. I don't know. We'll see. USC really could. They could lose that game. I just don't know if it's going to be enough for BYU to be able to slip and pass them. How far do we really think Oregon would fall from that? Notre Dame, they're playing Syracuse and Stanford. I don't see that. Oklahoma. Let's look at this. Missouri. That's right. I forgot about that. So Oklahoma actually has a chance. Missouri is a good team. We'll see if they're as good as Oklahoma, but they have a chance to come in and really upset Oklahoma and cause some chaos here last minute and some room for BYU to move up. I just don't see it. It's just crazy. You look at this Oklahoma schedule here. I'm going to move this over here so I can pull this up. I know there's better graphics than this, but you look at this. Okay, so Illinois State doesn't count. Michigan, they're a good team. They haven't been an amazing team, but that's at least a good win, if nothing else. But Temple, Auburn, who is sunk, it looked like a good win at the time, so they're riding fumes off of that. Kent State, whatever. Then they lose to Texas, who seems kind of mid, but they lose to Texas. You beat South Carolina, okay, great, and then lose to Ole Miss, who is a good team. Tennessee, who's lost to basically all the good teams in the conference and only beaten up on the bad teams in the conference. So from what I can remember, I should supposed to double check that. And then lost a close one to Alabama, respectable, or won a close one to Alabama. That is respectable. But, you look at a lot of this, and they were ranked so high to begin with because of these games that have proven over time to be a little bit less impressive. So, this little stretch here has really kind of locked them in. And this is where Missouri or LSU could make some damage or cause some damage there and Oklahoma to slip. But I don't know if I see it happening. I don't know how far I see him. I guess that would be a third loss. It'd be really hard if BYU wins out not to put BYU ahead of them. So really root against Oregon and Oklahoma the rest of the way. Obviously, all these teams other than Tech ahead of BYU, but realistically, I think Oregon and Oklahoma have a chance. Perhaps Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl. Georgia does play Georgia Tech at the last game, and despite where they've fallen, I think they're talented enough that they have a chance to beat Georgia. But we'll see there. And I don't think a 9-2 Georgia team is necessarily falling behind BYU at this point, especially since Georgia Tech is at least a ranked team. I don't think they're going to fall far enough. That's just going to really hurt their standings. But I don't know, guys. It's tough. It's a tough spot there for the Big 12 to realistically get a second team in. Oh, and on top of it all, we got Vanderbilt nipping at BYU's heels. So it would be really great if Vanderbilt could lose, and they have a chance. Kentucky probably not, but we'll see. And then Tennessee potentially. So I don't know. It really feels like this is a year that in a rivalry that Tennessee has really dominated. It feels like this is a year that Vanderbilt should win that one, but that doesn't help either, having Vanderbilt right on BYU's heels here. But we got Wise Gamora 3721 in the comments, so let's go to that. It says disrespect for BYU is not because of lack of style points. It says BYU has at least 3 more football games. I say enjoy them and let the rest take care of itself. Yeah, enjoy the season, but that's kind of been my mentality for most of the season, because it doesn't really matter till you get to the end. And I've been saying that, let BYU just take care of business and everything will work itself out. My problem is now we're at this point where I'm afraid that even if BYU takes care of business, it's not going to work itself out for BYU. But this game, I mean, that's the thing though. Every game truly matters, because if BYU wants to stay in this thing, they have to win and they can't rest. And it certainly won't hurt if they get the style points to go along with it. Getting those style points could go a long way towards helping them inch even just a spot. I mean, at this point, they just need to get up a spot. I mean, it all depends on where they end up being ranked this week by the committee. Again, I don't care about the AP poll, but they had them at 12. Feels like they should be able to move up a spot after a very impressive and dominant win. Texas just lost to Georgia, so BYU should theoretically also move up to 11, and that's in the CFB rankings here. I'm just looking. Yeah, I just don't know. It's going to look, I think, very similar. So I also wanted to see Tech move up a spot. I don't think that'll happen, although A&M should probably drop. I mean, they pulled out that win, which is super impressive, but you'd think you'd see them drop. But I don't know, because at the same time, you have Alabama just lose. And yes, you just can't. I don't know. Maybe Tech moves up a little bit. I don't think so. And that just helps the conference and potentially BYU at the end of the day after a conference championship matchup. So we'll see. I'm with you. Let's enjoy them. I think BYU's got, obviously has everything to play for. All their goals are in front of them still, and everything is achievable. Just can't let their foot off the gas. And I think that's not just in general with the season. It's also in these games. Can't let your foot off the gas at all. And you have to really take care of business. Don't mess around at all. So anyway, this has been such a great season. It's been so fun. Every game, every Big 12 game that we're in, I'm just looking around. I love being in a conference, and I love being in this conference. It is a lot of fun. Just wish that there wasn't so much bias in these rankings. But man, I love the Big 12. I love being in the Big 12. I love these rivalries. I love these teams, and it's so much fun. Speaking of, I got to bring up something though. I was talking about James Franklin. This is something that's been on my mind. Like, I just think of these teams that are struggling in the Big 12. Like, there's probably going to be a lot more firing. Like, you look at Sonny Dykes, he's got to be on the hot seat. I know that fans are getting frustrated with him you got to think that seat is getting pretty warm. But with Dave Aranda and Baylor, I mean, people thought I think the last couple seasons thought he was going to get fired. And I think Mac Rhodes is a big Dave Aranda guy. Mac Rhodes is now in hot water while Baylor's having a very unimpressive season. So I just think that there's going to be we already know there's some, and I think there's going to be more coaching job opportunities in the Big 12. Are those types of places that ultimately someone like a Jay Hill would want to end up? I don't know that, but I kind of suspect that maybe. And if that's the case, then that's going to be rough. So it's almost like BYU, through their success, is one, putting Jay Hill on the map, but also simultaneously helping put these coaches in hotter water, which is getting them fired, could end up leading to him leaving BYU. But that is a trade-off you take. You bring in somebody, you have a lot of success. If they end up leaving because of that success, then that is a good thing. We said that when Jeff Grimes was coming in. We said, hey, if he's gone in a couple seasons, then great. That means we've had a lot of success. And that is what happened. And that is all right. And so, all right here. Let me get to got to make some picks here now. Actually, let's do power rankings first. So let me move over here, get power rankings up, wrong screen. Let me remove that one and get my power rankings pulled up here. I'm going to run through this. I'm not going to debate them tonight because Adam's not here. So we're just going to run through mine as gospel. And this is my power rankings. These four at the bottom, I think, are pretty clear. Kansas has been in the middle for a lot of the season, but no question there, no question. West Virginia's been at the bottom, but I think the way they've been playing, even with a loss, they've earned their way to go up. UCF, Kansas has just been struggling, which is too bad because I think they're a promising team. It was kind of interesting to see this team, who'd always been one of the worst in college football, really have some success and have a lot of talent and potential. Haven't been able to put it together. Baylor's really been skidding. They're a mess. I think the West Virginia, again, the way they've come on, I put them ahead of these other teams. They gave Arizona State a run for their money. Granted, ASU is down some of their key players. Yes, I'm aware of that, but nonetheless, it was in Phoenix, and you got to think that West Virginia could be dangerous as Rich Rodriguez can get through a full offseason when he's able to recruit some more guys and get his own guys in and see what they're able to do there. Then TCU, I had them up several spots last week, had them fall after that loss. They've just they seem to be in shambles. You saw the fighting between Hoover and his receiver on the sidelines, just a lot of frustration. So have them down. I had to have Iowa State just ahead of TCU, even though they had been on that skid, but they did beat TCU the prior week. And then Kansas State, are they amazing? No. They have had a lot of injuries, but they have really figured some things out here late in the season. Granted, they barely got past Oklahoma State. That game was, I didn't watch any of it, but the score suggests that it was rather ugly. But I still think that they've been impressive now. I think based on their injuries and based on who they've got upcoming, like going against Utah, may not be pretty for them the rest of the way. They may fall. But I think right now, what they've done in this latter half has been impressive. Cincinnati, I actually have them at 7. You could argue they could be higher, but, they got shellacked by Utah and then lost at home. And so I've got Arizona moving ahead of them. They've been good, and which is great to see Arizona doing well. That only, I think, makes BYU's win look better and more understandable that they had to go to overtime in this weird rain delay game. So that's good. I still have ASU ahead of Arizona. Now, I don't know how good ASU really is at this point in the season, but I'm looking holistically at the things that they've done. They do have an extra loss that's out of conference. Although Arizona, they played Kansas State, and that didn't count as a conference game because that was already a game on the schedule. So, I mean, that's almost like they haven't even an extra conference game. Anyway, this middle section, you can kind of debate the order here, but that's kind of my thinking here. I mean, and they had to put Arizona ahead of Cincy. They just beat them. Iowa State ahead of TCU. So, I mean, this seems to be kind of where teams have been falling. Houston, I think 4 feels a bit high for this team, but then you look at what they've done, and they got beat bad by Texas Tech, and they had another. I can't remember who it was now, but anyway, have another loss on there. But they've looked really good. I do think there may be part of the thing is that they've had so much success this season. They're kind of ahead of schedule that it's starting to catch up to them a little bit. Maybe it's lack of depth. Maybe I don't know what, but I don't know if I see Houston ending the season at number 4, but I think at this point is fair. And then the top 3, I think, isn't really debatable. They've all played each other. Tech has won out, and Utah's lost them all, and those I think they're clearly the top 3 in the conference. So it's those middle 2 rows. It's all the middle. The bottom teams are the bottom. The top are the top. Everybody else is relatively close, and so. Anyway, I think that's where we're at. These power rankings are changing less and less week in and week out. Now it's just a couple seasons left or weeks left. I don't see a whole lot of shifting here, but we will see. Now, lastly, let's get to picks here. And let me see. I had my picks from last week with Adam. Does not get anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm kicking Adam's butt. I'll keep a tally. I am up by many games at this point, it looks like. So probably 8 games. So he's got I don't even know if he can catch up to me because I'm guessing our picks are going to be too similar. He did text me his, so let's go through and get those. I am going to start with the Kansas-Iowa State game. And I got to say, Iowa State gets this one done at home. Adam is throwing a Hail Mary, and maybe it's not a Hail Mary. Let's see here. I am going to have to – I'll do that later. Sorry, technical difficulties. So I'm picking Kansas. Actually, I need to do this or I won't remember. Open up something here so I can take these notes down. I think Iowa State gets it done at home. I think that Kansas has just been having a lot of issues and struggling a bit. And Iowa State has too, but they pulled out a really impressive win over Texas Tech last week. So I'm going with that. And so Adam has a chance to get one up on me. So we will see. And let me get this. All right. I am now ready to roll. And then we got Baylor, Arizona. And here, I can even pull these up so you can see, what I am looking at here. And yep. And here we are. So Kansas, Iowa State. Then we got Baylor, Arizona. And I got to go with Baylor. I don't have much hope for Baylor at this point. They do have talent, but Arizona's been really vibing lately, and it will be at home for them. And Adam agrees. Let's see. Kansas State, Utah. I mean, I don't really think that Kansas State is going to win that game. So I was debating doing it just out of principle, but I do think Utah wins this one. TCU at Houston. Now, this is a game. Oh, Adam is going with TCU. Okay. This is a game I would normally, if you would have told me a couple weeks ago this on the schedule, I would have said, no, I think TCU gets the upset. Like I just said, I think when people talk about paper Tigers, I think that's kind of Houston this year, paper Cougar, if you will. They're good. I just think that they're not as good as maybe their record suggests. And TCU could definitely go in and shock Houston. At this point, I think it would be a little more shocking. It wouldn't be crazy shocking. I still think TCU has a lot of talent. They just look completely demoralized this last week. Houston is well coached. I don't know if TCU even believes they might have a mutiny on their hands coming. I don't know. So that just makes it hard for me to want to pick TCU at this point. And then Oklahoma State at UCF. I am Adam has UCF, which makes sense. Most people should. I'm going to pick Oklahoma State here, if only to give Adam a little bit of a chance to make up ground on me. But no, I was saying all season, I think Oklahoma State gets another win somewhere. I don't know where it is. And if they're going to get one at all, well, I mean, where's a better chance than against UCF? So this is their best chance, one of their last chances. Probably won't happen. Actually, I'm kind of curious. What is the line on this game? If I open this up, what do they say? Here. UCF has a 90% chance to win, according to ESPN, and where's the gambling odds? Okay, has it not come out yet? Is it not at this point? I don't know. No, it should be out. Where did they list that on here? Anyway, I'll stop thinking out loud and keep this moving. But anyway, probably not pretty. And then Arizona State versus Colorado. Again, I'm going to go with ASU. I mean, it's just crazy because they lose their starting quarterback. They're clearly not the team that they started the season as. Adam also has Arizona State, but Colorado is just a mess as well. So I do think the Sun Devils get that done. And then BYU versus Cincinnati. And again, where do we find that? Because this is the one game we just pick straight up, except for BYU, since we always pick BYU, both of us, to make it a little different. Pick the whether they cover or not. Adam says he picks BYU to cover. I'm just not seeing. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments here, so I'm not floundering as much. But let me see. Is there what are the odds for? I don't want to get into these games. Anyway, I'm also going to pick the BYU covers. I think they come out and they have another big game. I'm not saying like a TCU type blowout, but I do think that BYU is able to go in there and make a statement against Cincinnati. And at least that's what I'm hoping. So both of us have BYU covering. Should be a good one. Let's see. I think that about does us for tonight, for this week. Thank you so much for joining. Again, working on getting another preview, getting another podcast host from Cincinnati to highlight and preview that matchup and give us a little bit of insight into what BYU can expect this week. And then, of course, we'll be on after. Adam says he will be back and joining me for our live reactions on Saturday night. So until then, please like this video, subscribe to the channel so you can catch all that content. Hope everyone has a great week. And as always, go Cougs.